Hello. Thank you, everybody. We'll get underway. If you could all just please find a seat. There's a couple more seats up in the front. Two over here. Yeah. Some new faces here. I'm curious, actually, who's been to Stone and Chalk before? Raise your hand if you've been here before. Excellent. We love people who come back. You're very, very welcome. My name's Dan Ryan, the community manager here at Stone and Chalk. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we live and work, pay respect to their continuing connection to the land, the water, and the community, and to pay respect to their leaders, emerging, present, and future. Well, look around you. I mean, this is testimony to a new era in Adelaide. It's fantastic to see this amount of people coming together, and isn't it an amazing privilege to be able to do that in recognition of the situation in so many different cities. And we thank you guys for following the COVID protocol and being seated when you're drinking. Well, you're here, and for those of you who haven't been here before, you're here at Stone and Chalk. We were founded in FinTech in 2015, and over the last 5 years have worked with late stage startups and scale-ups to provide all the necessary ingredients to scale. And that's included capital. In fact, we've contributed to over $550 million being raised for our startups over the last 5 years. Above us, there's 3 stories, 150 entrepreneurs, some 43 different startups that are part of the community here in Adelaide. And we also have hubs in Sydney and Melbourne. And along with the capital raising program, we have the other 4 pillars of our 5 pillars. So that includes our customer match program, the expertise program that includes the mentor match, the talent program includes one of the most highly sought after internship programs in Australia, and of course the community. And what we see here right now is evidence of the community that is being built here in Adelaide. So we're really excited to be able to be here and be a part of this evening. And I would like to hand it over to Natalie to kick it off. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dan. So my name is Natalie Take. I'm very nice to have you tonight here. Welcome, everybody. And I am a resident here in Law 14. I have a startup named eBotly. We provide solutions against counterfeiting. So we protect the brand of vineyards from South Australia and in other regions in Australia. And because I am French, I am a wine lover. So for me, it's amazing to be here and to discover Australian wine. So I'm very happy to welcome Leo Dennis, who is based in Sydney. And he started in 2016, the Startup&Angels. So the idea behind is to connect startup with angels. And I'm very happy to launch the first event here in Adelaide with him. So Leo, just feel free to introduce Startup&Angels and Australians what you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you, everyone. I must say I'm probably the only one who traveled interstate lately, and I'm very, very delighted, you know, as Dan mentioned, to be back to a physical event. You know, our last actually Startup&Angels was in Melbourne. There are a number of people attending from Melbourne, and you know, other part of the world, obviously. So I'll tell you a bit more about Startup&Angels, but the first thing is, like, you know, I'm so happy. And I think, you know, we've done a very good job in Australia in terms of, you know, managing this virus. And I'm really looking forward to 2021 and hopefully, you know, continuing to connect with a number of you and create connection. You know, being on Zoom and, you know, video calls is good, but like, you know, being in the same room, you know, feels very different. So I really very happy and, you know, encourage you all to meet with as many people possible tonight. You know, exchange cards if you still have cards. because yeah, I think it's more than important than ever to reconnect physically. So a little bit about Startup&Angels. So it's a journey we started with my co-founder Axel, sitting in Sydney, watching us through Zoom back in 2016. We've run over 50 physical events now. This is our first event in Adelaide. We've traveled 12 countries in Asia Pacific and Africa, actually, to run this type of events. We've run, for example, events in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, obviously Melbourne, where we did just under 10 events, I think, Sydney. And really what we want to achieve is kind of build a community, connect, like really build bridge in Asia Pacific. Obviously, as you can tell, both Natalie and I are actually from Europe originally, or from France. We build global bridge and really help founders, I suppose, to realize their vision. So what we did during COVID was actually to create an online community through a dedicated platform. Actually, it's an Australian SaaS called Ramen Life. Maybe some of you are familiar with this technology. So we've got kind of a closed environment where you can find other founders, investors, and resources. We've actually run a number of online events, obviously during COVID, and we launched a podcast as well. It's all kind of free for members, and you'll all be very welcome to join the community, and hopefully build more connection. So we've got a couple of kind of annual partners. One is Pledge 1%. Anyone is familiar with Pledge 1% here, or is a member of Pledge 1%? Member? Are you a member? Yes. So basically, it's actually powered by the Atlassian Foundation in Australia. Is to encourage startup founder or startups to kind of share, whether that's kind of 1% of their equity, profit, sales, with donation to help kind of change the world. It's a beautiful movement, and very, very happy to kind of promote them. So when you register today, a number of you may have said, I'm interested to know a bit more. You will receive more details on how to join the movement, and what are some of the benefits you could get through this movement. We also have OVH Cloud. We'll play a short video about them, and Yan Ling, actually in Melbourne, watching us, their startup program manager, will speak for a couple of minutes through a video to tell you basically what they've been doing with us. So it's a major cloud provider, originally from Europe, OVH Cloud. That's been in Australia, based in Melbourne and Singapore, opening in India now. So if you need access to cloud infrastructure, they could be a very good partner for you. Mike, you're gonna be launching the video. Yeah.
Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Yan Ling from OVH Cloud. I'm the Startup Program Leader for the Asia Pacific region. My role is to manage and develop the program in supporting the ecosystem and the startup community. We are very happy to partner with Startup&Angels by providing the community with more events, networking, learning, and business opportunities. We have been working with Leo and the team since 2019 for many meetups, networking, online panel discussion in Australia and in Singapore. We are looking forward for more to come. OVH Cloud Startup Program has supported close to 2,000 innovative businesses worldwide since we launched the program a few years ago. Back then, it was called Digital Launchpad. And this year, we are relaunching the program and named it as OVH Cloud Startup Program to include more perks to be offered to qualified startup and scale-up who join our program. We provide startups with reliable and affordable infrastructure needed to start and scale your business. With the program, Startups at all stages get access to resources including core marketing opportunities, technical support, and cloud infrastructure credit to up to $100,000 depending the maturity of your startup. With the credit voucher, you can enable services for hosted private cloud, public cloud instances, and also services around it such as managed Kubernetes, managed registry, data platform, cloud storage, and many more. We have 31 data centers worldwide across 4 continents, including Australia and Singapore. We're also expanding our business to India in supporting the Asia market. You can find more information about the program through our website, ovhcloud.com, or you can contact me directly. I will leave my contact detail at the chat function. If you can send me emails or call me and we can actually talk more about the program. Thank you and enjoy the discussion today.
Thank you, Yanling and Clément and the team in Melbourne for kind of preparing this video. So we'll send you more details in a follow-up email. And tonight we're partnering actually with Artesian. So Artesian Ventures, represented tonight by Shane and David, going to be sitting in both panels. I don't know if we still need to introduce Artesian, but I'm sure they'll speak by themselves. So massive thanks to the Artesian team. They actually did partner with us for our last physical event, which was for International Women's Day in Melbourne with a focus on medtech. So a big thanks to the Artesian team. And before handing over to Shane to moderate the next panel, I'd also like to thank my team, especially Sophie. A number of you may know Sophie Champagne. She's been amazing working behind the scene from Mexico, waiting for her pass back to sunny Adelaide. So Sophie, thank you so much for all your hard work and for bringing us all here tonight. Big thank you, Sophie. And Shane, welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm Shane Masters. I'm the latest member of the South Australian Venture Fund with David and Alex, wherever they are. And actually we have 2 more junior members than me, or recent members, which is Bass and Jack, who came in for work experience today. So, so I guess this panel is where it's not about Artesian or the South Australian Venture Capital Fund. It's about 3 startups with very different and interesting journeys that hopefully their stories can help inspire or at least give some a roadmap to all you other founders out there in the room that are heading down the journey of building a business and finding the right partner and capital to help grow your business. So if Oli, Brenton, and Flavia, if you want to come up and...
So welcome to Oli Madgett from Platform, Flavia, Tata Nardini from Fleet, and Brenton Cooper from Five Coast.
So whilst they're getting ready, I'll give you a quick background about myself. So I grew up on the Eyre Peninsula and have spent went to university here and spent the last 15 years overseas working for minority growth capital funds. So a bit more on the PE side and keeping in tune with the French theme. The last 3 years I was living in France. So 5 weeks back in South Australia, very happy to be back. And hopefully some of the contact. Got here, how you came from Europe to Adelaide, and then we'll talk about it through the panel, but your experience with raising capital, the good, the bad, and any tips for other startups hoping to replicate what you've built?
Well, so I have to start. So I already 2 glasses of champagne. So I'm like, ooh, okay. And it's like not a lot of air in this room. So I'm like, oh, it's time for a nap. Okay, so I'm Italian by background, and I've been in South Australia in Adelaide now for 7 years. Listen, my story is a little bit, what I love about today that I don't know many of you, so it excites me because I always talk to everyone. Everyone knows my story. They're getting so bored. But maybe some of you don't know me, so I'm very excited to tell the story again. Okay, so I'm a rocket scientist by background. Love space, love rockets. This is what I studied. This is what I've done in European Space Agency in Europe. And then I met my husband, and he was from Adelaide. And then I moved here, okay? So it was an interesting movement for me. It was very family related, but it started a big change in my life. When I came to Adelaide, it was 7 years ago, so I can promise you that the startup scenes was very different than now. Very, very different. So what's happening now is actually quite exciting. I raised 2 little kids that are still alive and doing good. So I think I'm nailing it, okay? But in the meanwhile, I was getting a little bit bored and I wanted to keep working in space. Space is my love. So I really didn't know what to do. I didn't have a passport, so I couldn't work in defense. I couldn't work anywhere. And I was pretty high level in space in Europe. So for me, it was like, okay, what's now? So I started a couple of startups, okay? Just a summary of this. I love space. So any startup that I needed to start was a tech startup and a space tech startup. So it's not that easy. So I don't know if how many of you know that since a couple of years, Australia's got a space agency, and the space agency is here. This is very new. So when I came here, there was no space agency. There was 0. So there was no space startups. There was nothing. So I remember saying to everyone, I should just start a space startup. It's gonna be cool. And everyone was like, not a chance that you can do it outside Silicon Valley. And that was pretty annoying since my partner is from Adelaide and Adelaiders do not want to move outside Adelaide ever. So I had to build it here. The past 5 years, I give you a couple of highlights. So Fleet, the company that I'm CEO and co-founder, is 5 years old, just turned 5 at the end of August. We have raised more than 20 million so far in 2-3 rounds, so it went very fast. We are building a constellation of small satellites as big as a shoebox. We are putting 100 of them around Earth for Internet of Things connectivity. So we connect devices. So we are creating a communication network around the world for device comms. Why device comms? Mainly for industrial IoT. That is the most boring sentence ever, but it's actually quite exciting. So it's what's happening in mining, in oil and gas, in energy, in agriculture, so the digital transformation of all data, okay? So I think Fleet is one of the biggest space startups in Australia, probably in the world. So it's actually super exciting. We raise money with a lot of great investors. I never raised before. I was a super nerd. And now I run a business that 1 year ago had 8 people. Now it's got 45. It's going to have 150 people next year. It's just growing. We launched satellites with SpaceX. So it's real satellites. It's not fake satellites. It's a real thing. And we actually now getting to a lot of revenues. It's actually very exciting. And we work all around the world. And it's all been done from here. So I've been through the Angels, the Series A, the C, the Series A, and now I'm approaching Series B. So I am learning, as all of the people here, probably a little bit further down the sum, and also trying to raise in a very complex topic, that is space, but nothing more than that.
Oli, over to you.
Okay, I guess just to share my journey, a bit like Flavia, originally from Norfolk in England, but we swapped our very, very small house in London about 5 years ago and bought a vineyard in McLaren Vale, which was an amazing thing to be able to do. So I kind of parted ways with my old world of running interactive TV campaigns and running a Facebook game startup. and then became a grape grower. So massive sea change. Platform started because of my frustrations becoming a grower. Like in viticulture, actually most tractors that you have going up and down vine roads are really small, simple machines with no technology on them. So I was wanting to use kind of imagery from space to direct my contractors to carry out work where I could see and my agronomists could see that it was needed most. But we had, because there was no tech on these tractors, there was no way to effectively communicate out to people carrying out work. So we started Platform very organically, and think of it a bit like a kind of a sat nav at its simplest instance, that I can tap out where I want work carried out on my vineyard. I share that with people who are doing work on our vineyard, and on their phones, they can, as they're going up and down vine rows, Platform is telling them to either start work or stop work or change rate. So it started totally organically just for ourselves, and we hacked it together with one of my co-founders. But it started to get picked up by other growers in our region. So it started to get picked up by the contractors. Then some quite major wine brands like Taylor's and Adelaide and Casella's started to use it. And then we got accepted onto a startup program in Melbourne called Sproutex, which Artesian are actually a supporter of. So that took us up kind of another level up. Then, like, really in the last 6 months, we've become like really focused on what is the global opportunity. So there's like 30 million simple tractors out there in the world, and they can all be made smarter just using a farmer's mobile phone. And the World Economic Forum, like, they've done some projections, like basically no farmers really outside of Broadacre in a few countries actually carry out work with precision. They do the same thing to all of their land, irrespective of its variability. And if the WEF said that if 25% of farmers start to actually like use phones to carry out work with precision, that would result in those farmers saving annually $100 billion a year on inputs that they don't need to put out. So precision agriculture is all about putting the right inputs at the right time, at the right rate, in the right place. And this, combined with space and what space can do, like making these devices ultra accurate, giving us imagery, crop health imagery of our vineyards, where every pixel is now a vine. So things from satellite can pick out every single one of my vines and tell me how healthy it is. And it now does that multiple times in a season. It's 10 times cheaper than it was 5 years ago when we became growers. So like this holds the key to basically transforming agriculture. If those same 25% of farmers do actually just start working smarter, that would result in about 300 million tons more food, which will feed a couple of billion more people on this planet, and ultimately help the industry to be more sustainable. So yeah, that's been our journey. We jumped on a plane just before COVID and went to California and met SVG Ventures, who, along with Artesian, are a really active ag tech investor over in the US. So that's helped us to kind of take the next step. We've had some amazing support here from the SA Startup Fund, which links into a deal we've done with Kubota tractors. So Kubota supply Kubota tractors are extremely reliable, but they're typically small, simple tractors. And they realize that the phone holds the key to making their customers carry out smarter work. So yeah, the SA Startup Fund supported us there. Also, Primary Industries South Australia has helped us to put in place a really exciting, very collaborative and open project in the wine industry to basically map every vine row in Australia using the same technology and bringing in that talent that's mapped the world's roads. So the people that basically have created that open street maps architecture, which powers Uber and like Ford Mobility and Lyft, we're bringing that talent now over into viticulture to apply that, to basically put those same building blocks in place in the Australian wine industry. And I'd say it's very quietly, but quietly we are doing absolutely world leading things at the moment, certainly in Vititech in Australia. So we just don't shout out enough about it, but there's kind of great things happening underneath the surface and things are really starting to come together.
I'm Brenton Cooper, and I'm a little bit different. Unlike Flavia and Oli, I was born in Adelaide. I did leave for a little bit, but I came back. So I'm CEO of Fivecast. What does Fivecast do? Well, our mission is to enable a safer world. And we do that by working with our customers to analyse conversations in the online world. So we work with agencies in law enforcement, national security, defence intelligence, border protection, and beginning to work in corporate security. And we use essentially artificial intelligence to uncover risks that the agencies can then deal with the threat. So our journey, there's really two views of our journey. The positive view is that we're the poster child of Australia's innovation ecosystem. The negative view is that we're a junkie for grant funding. So I'll take the positive view, but it did start quite a long time ago. About 8 years ago, I, with a few others, thought about how the national security agencies weren't really making the best use of artificial intelligence in their day-to-day business. And so we launched a cooperative research centre. So it was quite a big cooperative research centre, 5 years, quite short, but very focused on innovation and commercialisation. And in mid-2017, we spun Fivecast out of the Cooperative Research Centre. We then went on and we went to some of the people in the room here today, cap in hand, tech in SA, and got a small export market development grant, or export development grant. We then also applied for an accelerating commercialisation grant, got about 500,000 through that process to build sort of a bulk threat assessment platform that's now being sold, which is fantastic. And then after that, we had to exit the CRC properly, and we raised some money. So we raised $4 million through the SAVCF and Main Sequence Ventures, which is the CSIRO's venture capital. So you can see a bit of a theme here, all the government programs that we've gone through. Since then, we've availed ourselves of the SA Export Development Grant. We've also availed ourselves of the EMDG, the Export Market Development Grant, the R&D tax offset. So we're very good at writing grants, but we're also quite good at working with our customers. So over that time, we've been building quite a solid customer base. We're growing quite rapidly. By Christmas time, we'll be around about 40 employees between here and Arlington in Virginia. And over the last 12 months, so last financial year, we increased our revenue by over 5 times. And this 12 months, we're targeting an increase of another 4 times. So things are going quite well for us. But yeah, grant junkie or a poster child. It's up to you, really.
So I guess it'd be good to understand each of your journeys in terms of not every, I mean, it's a question, would you, as a startup, if you could avoid getting outside investors and bootstrap it yourself and go through, I mean, is that the dream of an entrepreneur, or is it, at what point in time do you say, actually, my journey is going to be easier with a strategic partner or a financial partner? And then in South Australia, what's been your experience of, where do you go? You know, where do you get that advice from? How do you find out the different venture capital seed funders or angel funders? What's the
okay, I'll lead off. Look, for us, it was really critical that we got outside funding. You know, grants only do go so far, and really we were at this stage where we had a few customers. They were using what we produced quite heavily, but we needed to maintain quite a large development team. And it was really, you know, we really had to exit the research centre. We needed to be at a significant scale. So it really wasn't a question of, do we take funding or do we don't take funding? It was, if you want to win the business, if you want to grow the business, then we need to be able to support the team that we need to do that. And so, yeah, that's why we went out and sought venture funding. We actually brought in an advisor. He was sort of a board member on the CRC, but he was quite au fait with how to go through that funding process, how to meet people, what's a pitch need to look like. And the other thing I should say, and I didn't mean to, forgot to say, but the grant applications that we went through really set us up really, really well. And I remember when we were applying for the Tech in SA grant and the Accelerating Commercialisation grant, both our advisors then saying, you know, we've heard that once you go through this process, you'll understand, you know, the market, you'll understand your business case, you'll understand, you know, the challenges that you're going to face in growth. And it's absolutely true. It's all the questions we had to answer through that grant application process were the same questions that the investors wanted to answer as well. So I think we were really well placed to go through that process.
I don't know. For me, it's hard to answer this question because I would never personally start a startup that doesn't go as big that you don't need VCs. Okay, so I found that it's the same hard work to build a startup bootstrapping that build a startup with a VCs, and I like the second type. I need to launch 100 satellites, so there is no way I can bootstrap it, I'm afraid, okay, unless I throw them for free in space. So I knew that day one was not a bootstrapping exercise. I've built my business with a co-founder. He bootstrapped a company up to 500 employees. So he has experienced both of the side of the apple. They are very different. You can not even compare. Like I had VC since day one in my life. And it's like you get money and they tell you to put them on fire. So now you got money, you got 1.5 years, put them on fire and go. So it's exciting, but that's what you have to do. So I think, in generally speaking, the reason why in South Australia we got these big VCs because we went global day one, big vision, massive vision, and even thinking about Australia, just thinking about the world, massive trends, and VC likes these things. There is could have bootstrapped. I just can't see myself bootstrapping anything. Not because I don't know business, just because the ambition is too big. You know, the dream is too big. So you need to just get a lot of support and inspiration. And every time you get around, you just have to make it 10 times bigger and 20 times bigger, 100 times bigger. And I find that excitement of having millions of dollars, having 2 years to spend them, 1.5 years to spend them, launching 10 satellites, is just, that's innovation in the pure state. That's when you got pressure, you got stress, you got limited resources, you got limited time. I think that's when the energy kicks in and you're like, just achieve the most exciting innovations you can ever imagine. So answer your question, I don't know, you get the money outside, I guess. Do it big.
I'd say I've kind of had two different experiences. My experience in London, like we were fortunate enough to start making Facebook games back in 2008 when Facebook first moved to London, and we had an incredible chairman called Dickie Dale who used to run the media desk of Citibank, and literally he believed in us as a team of people who'd come from kind of television and games, and he basically single-handedly pulled together the most amazing group of angel investors that we could have ever hoped for out of the game genres that we worked in. So we had like the head of EMI Music and a load of the England football team and Tim Cahill from here. And so we had loads of footballers because we made a football game, and we had people from music and we had people from film, but that was all under EIS. But it was amazing. Like I've never experienced the same rush as when Facebook, when they weren't evil at one point in time, they were really amazing. And they developed, like in London in 2008, they were the first company I ever saw turn up. They did these things called Facebook developer garages, which is basically what's turned up into these meetups. And like they made an ecosystem and they helped us to raise like serious amounts of money. And it was so exciting. And they also then stripped all that money off us a couple of years later, which is not such, that was when they turned evil, but it was great. And, but I'd say I've never, like there was EIS, there was an instrument in the UK that basically meant that our investors were, their downside was really protected. But there was just like, yeah, we raised quite a significant amount of money from high net worth individuals. And that doesn't seem to be quite the same here in Australia. It's very different here. So that feels very different, but was very exciting when it happened with Facebook. The other thing that we're in ag tech, and actually there's only a small number of VCs that either are impact investors or really understand the space and understand the kind of long-term nature of agriculture. So Artesian are one, Tenacious Ventures are another, the CSIRO main sequence, they invest in some deep tech stuff in our space. But yeah, so it's very, very different in ag tech. But no, very happy with like having support. SVG, again, having that little bit of, I've never worked with Californians before, and that's been a real eye-opener in a good way, and really pushed us. So yeah, again, not nowhere near as much money as Flavia, but it's great to have a bit of a rocket up you. Yeah, to kind of get on with it.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
to make
Literally.
you think a bit bigger. And yeah, and they really do encourage you to kind of think big, and that's made us think like we can make. There's no reason why this can't make any farmer in the world by 2030 capable of precision agriculture, but it needs sometimes that different perspective from elsewhere, just to go like, hey, look up a bit and try and go big.
So if you're a founder and you've funded it to a certain level and friends and family are all saying, this is great, go for it, then you get to the next stage and it's maybe not the right thing to walk in and speak to a venture capital fund here in Australia or overseas. Where do you find funding in Adelaide or in South Australia to take it to that next level, but maybe it's not
Grants?
And it's not grants. So you've tested grants, and that's as much as far as you've gone. Like, have you had experience or know of other companies, and where do you go? Like, how do you find angel investors and seed investors here in South Australia?
I think angels investors are hidden. That's the really big struggle in Australia and South Australia. So before entering into the investors' world, I'm like, where are these people? Like, how do we find them? And still, it's important. Once you're in, you know everyone. Like, yeah, like just 2 days ago, where were the people? So it's very, very hidden, and it's really a pity, because great opportunity from startups and from investors is about funnel. You need to talk with a lot of people, and you need to learn and make mistakes and talk and invest. And even angel investors, they need to spread their risks, invest in different things. But if they don't know we exist, and you don't know you exist, the match doesn't happen, right? So
how is that profile building? If you're a startup, how do you get profile?
I don't know. I think what we did is it's hard to say, because in my case, such a big startup, such space startup led by a woman. It's terrible to say, but makes PR. So we're all the newspapers, so people read about you, so you're very exposed, very exposed. Customers helped. Customers were talking with everyone. Customers were a great channel. I skipped angel investors. I don't know. Someone have angel investors?
No, yeah, we don't have any, not in platform. So we've just, again, actually to bridge that thing, like there's been periods in platform where we literally just haven't paid ourselves for like 6-9 months, and we've just and we've all had to suck it, and we've literally all had to suck it up, and that has caused us like immense pressure, specifically at home. Shane knows my wife, who's an accountant, so you can imagine my pain. So that, like, it's hard, but we did get through. And like, I'll tell you, agriculture is literally, ag tech is a battle of attrition. Like, it is the last, like, if you can hang in there, and like, it takes a while, and all this stuff's coming together, but it's slow, so you have to have a long-term outlook, but stuff's coming together, and things are actually now starting to make sense and start to scale. So,
but where do
exciting.
To answer the question, where do you find angels? Like, do you ask, like, where do you find angels?
That's a question to the audience there.
Yeah, exactly. We've never been there, but there are things now. There are things in place. The problem is sometimes people do not even know that those things are in place. But I think if you research them, you find them. Now, if you Google it, exactly.
We're
get out of your garage.
There's obviously there's this group that Leo's leading. Like Jason is helping to lead Innovation Bay, which is a different group of angels that exists in Sydney and Melbourne, and they're actually doing a specific ag tech event in November, I think, in Sydney and Melbourne. So yeah, we'll definitely try and get along to that. And like Flavia said, it's like quite hidden. We've just recently been able to kind of go and pitch to like some angel groups in Sydney just before lockdown that they're just not very publicly known, but it's like a little network. And once you get inside the network, they let you in, and somebody had the faith in us to let us get in front of this group. But yeah, remarkably hidden compared to London.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So throw to the audience for a few questions if people have any questions.
it was just like so many more, it was just so much more active. So like there was just so many more people. I'd say it's actually the city, I was there in, from 2000 to like 2014. And there was an awful lot of money made in the City of London in those times. So there was, there's almost every industry is significant there. So the media industry is really strong. The advertising industry is really strong there. And again, good people came and found you. Like our chairman, Dickie Dale, like it just these kind of really great, spontaneous, serendipitous meetings of people that open doors for you, like very willingly, just happened. That doesn't happen as often, I've found, in South Australia. And this guy, Dickie Dale, like he was the person who led our round. He just gave us some money, said, trust me, I'll get you $1 million and $2 million to start with. And he did, and that just led on. But I know tons of other people like us that also raised money. And again, we were just there when Facebook happened. Like there was a bubble, and ad tech and games and a couple of other things just exploded. And people came out of there.
I actually think here that before this, also startups were quite hidden. So it was really hard for angel investors to know who is good or who is not. Now, if someone wants to invest, can come in here and talk with one of the guys and say, okay, let me know what are the good companies. Can I have a coffee? Can I have a chat? So I think there is a system that they are putting in place in the city. There is a system, there are groups. So it's happening. It was not there 5 years ago, but it's happening now. Pretty sure if someone wants to invest, there are 10 to 20 companies that are really worth it to look into. Now, not a million, they're gonna get more and more. So the system is happening. I mean, and it's quite exciting. But what do you think, Brenton?
Oh, geez.
You were falling asleep, I saw you.
I'm just sitting here thinking, yeah, grants. Is there another grant that I can get? I don't know. But I will say, look, I think you're right. There is a lot of support for it at the moment from the government to connect the ecosystem here in Adelaide, and grants are a significant part of that. But no, I kid you not, it really does help. Even just going in, having the discussion, say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're trying to achieve. We're looking for some grant funding. There's small ones. Our first grant was $50,000. And it was a sort of a 1 to 4 matched funding, so we had to put $12,500 in. But that got us known to the people in the government, got us known to investors. We could then go start speaking to VCs about, hey, we've got this, this grant. And then we went and got another grant. We've got this accelerating commercialization grant. That's a stamp of approval. And I remember Doug and Grant Steinberg telling me this is a stamp of approval, and it was. So, start small. Look at every avenue you can. I think Fixie and the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur are doing a great job. I think Lot 14 is a great thing. So I think there's a whole lot more support. I didn't do angels, but there is a lot of support for early stage. So.
I actually agree with you. And I think it's the same with VCs anyway. You don't reach a VC with a cold email and say, give me money. No, you have to get to know people, like angels particularly. I mean, we had some angels in the first round. They came through the VCs and everything. And I have to admit, in the first couple, I don't have contact with my little investors anymore. That's a pity, because they were amazing in the first couple of years. I mean, they were the one that were calling me every week and said, do you need anything? Like, do you want me to check this? Do you want me to help you on this? Put me contacts. They are really a change maker for the first couple of years. And so that communication on getting to know each other as on a personal level, and also understanding what the angel investor can do for you, I think is very important. It's the same with a VC. I think every VC that I had, it started from an advice on a friendship or on a communication. So I think this is missing sometimes, so that we are a community. It's very funny when you go to Silicon Valley, there are these events in which angel investors and VCs and startups are all together. They know each other since 10 years. So investors know you. They're just waiting for you to come up with a decent idea, you know, and they're like just monitoring you and say, okay, let's see if this idea is better. So Adelaide is amazing in terms of collaboration and friendships. That's the soul of this state. You can reach anyone if you ask. You can be everywhere when you ask, but my feeling, what I said, is that if you actually have a startup that is going to change the world, they will know. Like you're not going to be hidden. You know, if you have a startup that is really making an impact, they will all see you. So isn't the problem before, like, why don't we build startups that are actually massively amazing? And then no one will be hidden. You know, everyone will see you and everyone will want you. So let's work on that.
I think the other thing is, you know, the way we look at investment, it doesn't happen overnight. It's all about relationship building. So getting out there and meeting potential investors, telling them your story, telling them what you're trying to achieve, and then going back and back and back to sort of update them on how things are going. Like we're not actively looking for investment at the moment. We might do in 12 to 18 months, but I'm constantly on phones to new VCs, sending out email updates of what's happening with Fivecast over the last 3 months. So we're probably doing that to 30 odd investors at any given time. So it is all about relationship building. And from their side, it's good as well. You know, why do we want to invest in this small Australian startup? There's so many things to choose from. They want to see traction. They want to see progress. They want to get to know you. So it's about that relationship building, and you know, it starts with the angels as well. Go out, tell them your story, and you get better and better and better at doing it by practicing. So yeah.
If there's any investors in the room at the SAVC fund, Alex, how many deals have we seen since March this year? 136. Yeah, so we can't invest in many. So what happens usually is people come in and they say, okay, this is where we're at, and we'll either point them into the direction of other, if they're at seed stage, or other investor grant programs. So at the moment, we're a bit of a lighthouse because there's not too many VC funds in South Australia. But if you're a founder or startup, come to us. The chances are it won't fit our precise metrics of investment, but we're here to try and help the ecosystem as well. So if we can connect you with corporates in America and Europe, which is my network, or Alex and David, obviously are really strong here in Australia. So that's another function that we play as part of helping startups get capital. It mightn't be through us today, but in a couple of years' time, that's what we're working towards. So I think we're nearly done with time.
Yeah.
So if everyone can thank the panelists.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
And massive thanks to all of you. Thank you. Don't forget your grant before leaving.
So
yeah, you go.
So we welcome the second panel. So Danielle will be the leader of this panel.
I just need a microphone. So
Use this one for now.
sorry, everyone. I was just getting notes from Michael about we should introduce the name Fairy Investors and Henrys as an acronym, which is High Earning Not Rich Yet Individuals. So there you go. Hello, everyone. I'm Danielle. I'm part of the team behind South Start. Craig, Jason over there. Great to see you all here. I have to say, it's pretty overwhelming seeing you all here. I don't know if anyone else is feeling a bit in the COVID headspace and liking their own company at the moment, but I definitely am. So it's great to be amongst you all tonight. Just for some short context, South Start is arguably one of the leading technology and innovation events in the country. We like to think so anyway. We're gratefully supported by the government of South Australia and FIX. As a bit of a, you heard it here first announcement with COVID, obviously have reconsidered our dates. So we're looking at February the 17th to the 19th next year. And in the meantime, pull out your calendars and you'll hear an announcement in the next few weeks about an event on November the 19th that we're teaming up with our partners to deliver here at Stone & Chalk and some other exciting things around there. A lot more comfortable behind the stage. My hand's a bit shaky, so anyway, but excited to introduce our panelists here tonight. Now we have Judy Halliday, who is amongst other things, the Chief Operating Officer for the Office of the South Australian Chief Entrepreneur. Now we have, welcome Judy. We also have David Rorsheim, who is the Portfolio Manager at the South Australian Venture Capital Fund, managed by Artesian Ventures. So a big welcome to David. And we have Liana Reid, who is a member at Startup&Angels, but also is the chair of the South Australian AgTech Advisory Group, amongst other things as well. So thank you for joining us tonight. A lot of my work was done in the previous panel. It was great to hear a conversation about the money that's hidden in the hills, as Craig would say, and talk about the health of our ecosystem and investment scene here. And I'm going to continue to ride that wave. We have strong representation here tonight from people who have a vast range of experience amongst venture capital, angel investment, government grant funding. So let's dive into that a little bit. Liana, I might start with you. I'd love you to introduce your role, particularly with your Startup&Angels hat on, and how you play a significant role in our ecosystem here in South Australia.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been involved in the angel group since it started. We started with BioAngels back in 2002. Can you hear me? Yeah, it seems to be on. Okay. Just recently, a year ago or so, we transformed the Southern Angels, which expanded its effort, and Josh Garrett's our executive officer over there. We don't hide under a bushel. I think we're out there. In the last year, we have assessed, I think, about 100 different companies, invested in a total of 7, I think, over that time, and invested over $1 million. So these are all from high net worths in, your own investments, doing that. Adelaide, of course, is a relatively small scene compared to, say, Melbourne in the angel network, but it's a very important one for reasons we'll probably discuss. But I see things from both sides of the fence because I've also founded a biotech company, TGR Biosciences. I chair a couple of early stage high growth companies, Carina Biotech and TechSite. So I see that from that side of trying to attract capital, and from the other side of that, and I'm also involved in, I'm on the board of Uniseed, which is an early stage venture capital company. And on the government side of things, I get to what Brendan said about grants. On the biotechnology investment fund, biotech investment fund, which has awarded a number of venture capital fundings to existing venture capital funds. So a whole range of things apart from other things I do and AgTech advisory and so forth. So industry support systems, I'm happily not in an executive position anymore. I love it. So I get the chance to give advice and walk away.
Thank you. David, I'd love you to introduce yourself and your role at SAVCR.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me. I suppose I have to also confess to the joys of not being in an executive role right now. My last 5 years was running Uber in Australia, which was certainly a 24/7 job. But before that, I was schooled in venture capital in San Francisco, working with a fund named DFJ. They made super early stage bets. Frankly, those partners had already made a lot of money, so they're at a stage in life where they're only doing things that they thought would change the world. The byproduct of that was often that it also, made some money, but it was a big eye-opening experience for me around the sort of the right scale of ambition. If your internet company
you should think global because all of your competitors are thinking global as well. I am now with the SA Venture Fund. That's not a new concept. It's a few years old. The government over the last few years has had a suite of initiatives to help bring the startup ecosystem out of the dark ages, which were described by Flavia. There's some support for the super early stages of business. The SA Venture Fund is there to help startups that have a product. The idea has been created. It's not just a business plan. You potentially got a few customers that we can talk to and validate that it's a real product that has real customers and a real need. And you're looking to expand, maybe nationally, internationally, and compete on that global scale. It's a for-profit venture. It's not a grant program. When the SA Venture Fund invests, it is buying equity, just like any other venture capital fund. So we're mindful that the best entrepreneurs have choices, they have options, and there's other venture capital funds they can take their money from. And it's my job and Shane and Alex's job to hopefully be the fund and the individuals that the startups want to work with. That's what we're up to.
Thanks, David. Over to Judy.
I don't think I can say that I've escaped executive roles, so I can't, but I can say that I have escaped from executive roles in startups, which is what I was doing before I started working with the South Australian Government. And so I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Office of the South Australian Chief Entrepreneur within the Department for Innovation and Skills. And I'd like to shout out to the Minister who's just sitting there. Good evening, Minister, nice to see you. So the department the Department for Innovation and Skills has carriage of a whole bunch of things that are relevant for the startup ecosystem, including, bringing Stone and Chalk here to run this fantastic startup hubs, establishing things like the Cyber Collaboration Centre, the South Australian Venture Fund, and a whole bunch of other activities that go on delivered basically through the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur, including some early stage grant funding. So there's a whole bunch of things that are happening in South Australia and have been happening in the last few years that are designed to really shine the light on entrepreneurship and startups and the value and benefit that they bring to us as individuals, collectively as a community, and to the world at large, and to really also help people to start thinking about their businesses in a global context. Now, obviously, early stage investing is really, really important for South Australian businesses. And so we're really excited to see Southern Angels getting going with, a whole bunch of really exciting things and investing in some of our really interesting startups. Innovation Bay's been mentioned, and hopefully they'll get off the ground with doing some things post-COVID. A little bit tricky to do stuff, although, as Danielle pointed out, there does seem to be a lot of us in the room together here today. Is it? Are you Donald? So I guess what I'm here to do is to talk about what we can do for startups and the ecosystem through things that are going on from the South Australian Government's perspective. But I will also confess that I have been a founder in startups that have taken angel investments. So I do have a track record and expertise in taking angel investment as a startup founder, both Australian angel investors and US angel investors.
I might.
Ooh, now there's a difficult question to answer. Some of those things are still, actually all of them are still a work in progress. I'm just not with them currently.
Might just jump on that. What was your experience? What was the difference in experience at a personal level, taking venture fund or taking angel investment and dealing with grant funding and looking into venture capital? I know that with each of those different pathways at a personal level for many founders here tonight come different implications. Can you provide any comment on what that difference was like?
I think in a very generic sense, angel investors are much more about, they'll come in usually earlier into your business when it's a little bit more risky, but they usually have very strong domain expertise and great networks specific for the thing that you're interested in. One of the businesses was actually an ag tech kind of business, I guess. So that's interesting. But the people that got involved were really interested, passionate, had connections to customers, would get in and roll their sleeves up and really work hard in the business with you. That's not to say that venture investors don't do the same thing, But angel investors are a bit more operational, I guess, whereas venture investors tend to be much more roll the sleeves up from a strategic perspective. They're all about how are we getting your business positioned to get as quickly as possible to some sort of exit event. Angel investors are also interested in an exit event, but they probably invest more personally, and this is a generalization, in actually, you know, getting your business working, ironing out some of the early kinks, getting you ready for the next set of investors. A couple of the businesses actually did have angel investors and VC investors at the same time.
David, do you have any comment to add to that in the difference between your approach through the SAVCF compared to someone like Liana with Southern Angels? What might be some of the different considerations that you look at when just doing your due diligence and deciding whether to invest in a company? How are they distinct from the angel pathway?
There's going to be a bit of overlap. At the end of the day, they're both buying shares in a company. And along the journey, more likely that the angels are arriving early, and they could either be someone that's passionate about this field, or they could be someone with a lot of money who just wants to make some investments. Probably what's going to be a little bit different is, you know, without disrespecting the amount of time and effort that angels put into an investment, is there's probably going to be a bit more of a process with a venture capital fund, probably because there's more money attached to it as well. And they've got a board and they've got their own investors that also need to be satisfied that due diligence has been done. Some angel investors just investing their own money and they write their own rules and they can make decisions as fast as they want. Some of the angel networks are a bit more organized than that, so there'll be a bit more of a formal process. But I'd say the biggest difference between a venture fund and an angel fund is, in general, more money from a venture fund and probably a little bit more forms to fill out, so to speak.
Now, Liana, I know your background is heavily in the biosphere. How does that, obviously that's typically a quite slow growth industry, or very high level of investment there. How would someone looking at approaching Southern Angels from an ag tech background, how would you assess them compared to someone that had a med tech company? For example, does your level of experience in your own realm play a significant factor in whether you can establish that investor-founder relationship?
Only to some extent. I mean, I think that angels apply the same principles across the different fields. We probably don't invest that much in what's the classic biomed stuff of drug development, because it does require such large chunks of funding, and you know those damn venture capitalists are going to come afterwards and screw you with preference shares, veto rights, et cetera, which actually is interesting because in that context, because I'd be interested to know the views of startups, because venture capitalists do come along with a very set, it's a script of we need preference shares, we will have veto rights, ABC, we will have 2 board members, blah, 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 blah. But there is actually a lot of flexibility in the system, is my feedback I would give, and don't take that for granted that that's what they're going to take. So as an angel investor, I prefer a bit more flexibility. And I think, yeah, angels come in, they're investing their own money. You know, this is your retirement funds that you're investing. A big difference from a venture capital organisation that's investing other people's money. Now, hopefully the drivers are still the same, but it's quite a different personal investment in what you're doing. I don't think it matters so much across the sectors. You tend to want to invest in sectors, I think any investor wants to invest in sectors that you understand. I don't understand the IT sector. Whereas people who are not in that sector would say, I don't understand this bio sector at all. And so you can basically make the wrong decisions because you can't interpret the key drivers. But you know, our angel group has expertise across a range of domains, and the beauty of it is you get together in a group and the one who's the expert says, you know, I'm saying this and whatever, and we tend to go along with that because you trust the people. At the end of the day, it's a people thing. I think we said this in the last panel, that who you know, how you get to know people and the trust in the people and their capabilities it has to be the most crucial thing, because probably, I don't know, of the companies in this room who started out with an idea, how many are on exactly that same track now or have changed directions as a company? How many are not on the same track as you absolutely started a company? Hands up. Yeah.
Stand up.
Yeah. So what you do, and that happened with me with the company I founded, TGR Biosciences, which started out developing a therapeutic, had a terrible clinical trial, and that was the end of that. We ended up being a successful company. It's been sold now to a UK major company because we're in the area of assay kit development for the bioscience area. Profitable biotech company, which is a bit of an oxymoron, I think, but that's the way it was. And doing well. So you change direction. So at the end of the day, it's the people and the quality of the people and what they bring, and how do they think outside the square? Are they willing to accept advice? Because angels like to give help. You're doing it. The different. It's the same thing with venture capital, really, but the spectrum from being philanthropic through to hard-nosed investor is a different positioning in there. And the angel investors are more about saying, can I help this company? And maybe I'll make some money at the end of the day, but I don't necessarily care that much. I want to help companies. So there's a lot of help that goes into saying to companies who come to us. As I said, as Joshua said, we're 100 companies over the last year. We've invested in 7. I hope a lot of those companies have gone away and said, well, I didn't get investment, but gee, I got some advice on that from people who know. So that's the difference.
Yeah. Now, I know we have a number of budding finance students here. Andy out the back. Back in the day, we built the website for the Adelaide Uni Finance Society. Talk me through, David, the pathway to VC. I believe your background was in economics initially.
As a job?
As in what you studied. How did you get into the path of venture capital?
Yeah, I can share my journey. It's not an enormous industry, so there's not sort of a rigorous established pipeline, but what worked for me was I had studied both engineering and finance. And my first job as an analyst at a venture fund was first line of defense against thousands of business plans that would come in. They got mailed in back in the day, and just take the first look at them and make sure that the bigwigs at the fund got to see the real good ideas. And they're a technology startup, so there was some aspect of technology and some aspect of business to it. So that worked well for me. That got me in the door. I think I'd worked at some small companies. That helped as well. When I thought, I spent some time at that venture fund, but everybody that was more senior than me had worked in a startup or a big tech company. And so it was pretty clear to me that if you ever wanted to come back and be a senior person in venture capital, that you needed that experience. And I think there's 2 reasons for that. One is it makes you a better judge of what's a good idea and what's going to work, and you might potentially have some better advice for the people you're investing in. But also remembering that you're in a competitive environment, the folks that you're trying to invest in are going to ask, apart from your money, what good can you do for me? What use would you be on my board? And if you've got some real experience, then you've got a bit more to talk about, as opposed to I've just managed money and nothing else. So that was my journey, and I think that's, if anything, the most typical journey.
And I think something that, and it's quite nice, I see a range of ecosystem leaders here tonight, investors, founders, corporate folk, and many other people interested in the startup realm. Judy, I'd love to know, obviously with Lot 14 and the precinct that we're within right now, and Stone and Chalk, Chris over there, if anyone wants to speak to you later. Tell me, with your efforts in government right now and the investment in our innovation ecosystem, how critical is this public face and having this central room to gather? How critical is that within our state?
It's enormously critical. I think it's always a challenge. I think we've heard that there's lots of challenges. It's a challenge to identify who the financial people are, who's going to invest, where are the angel investors, What this does is this physical embodiment, if you like, of what we're trying to do for entrepreneurs and startups in South Australia is it creates density so that you have a whole bunch of people doing a whole lot of different things that are all together in the same place. And that density is one way of creating critical mass. It's, you know, we heard Oli talking about London. You know, London is, as you all know, everybody lives this close together in their daily lives, and there's millions of them. So they have critical mass just by the fact that they're all in London. So that density is really, it just exists. I mean, I'm not going to go into the why, you know, the structures that are there and the taxation regimes that exist in the UK are very favourable for early stage investors, and we heard mention of the EIS and that sort of thing, and that's why you get so many, because you can actually, you know, invest your money while you're alive and see the benefit of it, you know, unlike in some other places. And it's similar in the US. There are some taxation advantages, structural advantages in their system that makes it much easier for angel investors to invest, de-risks their investment to a certain extent. But, you know, we're fighting constantly here against the challenge of not having 22 million people living in, you know, downtown Adelaide. And this is one way of creating that environment without having 22 million people. So I think that's very important. It's about making sure that we have that connected network of individuals and people in the startup ecosystem, entrepreneurs, businesses, customers, investors, government, close by each other so that they can then bump into each other and have those collisions that result in all sorts of interesting things happening. It gives you scale without having to have scale, effectively.
And just for the audience's benefit, what are some of the key programs, like the Gov2Gov program, the RCFS fund? What are some of the key initiatives that they might like to go away and do a Google search about after this?
Well, as you know, we do have grants. we have the Research Commercialisation and Startup Fund, the RCSF, which has a number of different avenues into it for funding for ecosystem and related things, but also directly for startups, which is like, and we do make you work hard to get that money so that you can be prepared to get money from other people. You know, I think it's worthwhile pointing out that government is investing your money. You know, you as the taxpayers are, it's your money we're investing, so we take it very seriously. We look really hard. We're not going to give it away easily. That said, government's also a really big business in this state. So the Go2Gov program, government as a customer, most startups would really much prefer to have paying customers than grants, particularly if you're a B2C type of customer or a SaaS type customer, where you can quickly translate your product into revenue and bootstrap. Obviously, if you're developing a new drug, that's a little bit more tricky, unless you've got Donald in your customer base. But those are the two big programs that we have currently running. There's a whole bunch of other programs that run intermittently during the year. We have a mentoring program. We provided funding through to a couple of the angel groups to get, you know, activate angels. We provide funding to South Start, various other things. So there's a whole lot of levers that government's pulling, if you like, to try and build that capability, capacity and density in the system.
And David, how are some of the ways that people can get in contact with you via SAVC? Trying to provide some tactical takeaways.
Oh gosh, hopefully we're not hard to find. My name's David Rocha. I'm back of the room. You'll find Shane, you'll find Alex. So, you know, if you're in this building, it's not too hard, but I'm you know, conscious that Lot 14 is not the only place that innovation happens in South Australia. Mm-hmm. So there's a website, www.savcf.com, South Australian Venture Capital Fund.com. That's probably the right starting point. But, you know, Judy knows where we are. If we think that the grants program is a more appropriate place for somebody, we'll redirect you elsewhere. If we think that, you know, a specialised venture fund in your domain somewhere outside of South Australia is the right place to go, we'll also make those introductions. Yeah. We have there's two missions. Like I know the Treasurer has great interest in what we're doing because we make investments, and I think there's an expectation that hopefully that's a great investment and that we make money for the state. But the the Minister for Innovation and Skills is interested in just entrepreneurship succeeding in the state in general, whether or not it's just this fund making money or not. So we also serve that mission to just help.
And Liana, how can people get in contact with Southern Angels?
Look up the website for Southern Angels. Josh Garrett's sitting over there, our executive officer. Put your hand up there, Josh. Stand up.
Yep.
So, yep. Yep. So, you know, just find us. And Josh has a very, you know, it's quite orchestrated, even though, you know, Angels sort of appear to be kind of this disorganized lot that come together every so often out of the woodwork. We're actually quite organised. And there are angel groups interstate as well that syndicate. We're looking more and more to syndicate because one of the limitations of angel funding often is that you just haven't got enough money to really make a difference for a company. And the last thing a company wants is a series of, you know, a whole series of ants as shareholders who, you know, just increase the numbers but not the dollars. And so syndication is one of the things that we do. So that's, I'd also encourage people to look up, particularly Melbourne Angels, very, very well organised, but Sydney and Brisbane as well, to look up for them. And we're very happy to work with them.
Fantastic. Yeah, Josh was talking about his Notion setup for Southern Angels, which he's very proud of. Is there any audience Q&A? Throwing the mic to the...
Thanks. It's been some really good insights for everyone and great to see everyone out tonight. There's always a lot of focus on high growth venture scale startups. And I know as a state, that's a big focus for us. There's also a sort of a set of metrics around a company that fits that criteria, especially when it's venture backed. It needs to be able to return an amount of capital to those VCs over a number of years. It's become increasingly easier to start a business and grow a business with the cloud and accelerators and so forth, which is, you know, many people in this room that I know have been able to create great businesses that I think over the next 10 years can be $30, $50 million businesses. That's not necessarily going to fit the bill of a venture-backed type of company. And I think there's a massive gap in funding for companies that really just need $250,000, $500,000 as a one-off investment to get up and running. What can we do as a startup community to fill that gap, to give these founders with great ideas who want to build, you know, businesses that are in that sort of, you know, 10, 30, $50 million a year revenue? Because I think as a state, we've got a great track record of building those types of companies. And I think that the more of those we build, the more first-time founders we have who can exit those companies either through an acquisition, through, you know, potentially IPOs, and then recycle that capital into sort of the next future second, third generations of a startup community. So any ideas on how we foster that?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I mean, I think that's a sweet spot for the angel investors, because quite often we don't look for the really high growth companies because you're just going to be so diluted by, you know, large numbers of rounds of venture capital. And you feel like, well, you know, what influence can I have? I want to help, you know. It's so angel investment tends to go for a bit more of, I call them the organic companies, and perhaps help them achieve that. I agree there is still a gap there that's hard to address. It's a real, you know, you get that 3 F's funding, and then, you know, you're not at the point for venture capital, and then you've got to do all these equations, which you do often quite theoretically about how I'm going to be a 10, 20 times return type company. It ain't the case. I think actually we probably need to put in the Australian environment with the kind of investment funding position we have, which is not like the US, more of a focus on companies thinking, how can I actually achieve a bit of cash flow is a good thing to do. So one of the companies I chair, for example, TechSite, is already, it's only 2 years old, so it's already generating $500,000 per annum in commercial revenue. We get grants too, we like those, Brendan. Yeah, and the investors like you to say, well, I'm going to double your funding in a non-dilutive way. Yes, thank you. So that's very, so it's good, but generating commercial cash flows, a slight deviation, only slight, from what its ultimate growth strategy will be, but having that cash flow, particularly in this environment, is one hell of a protective factor, and I think a positive for investors. So some of those sorts of business strategies and also the types of investors, but I think we have a gap that way. In somewhere a bit between the full-scale venture capital and the angel, the UniSeed fund that I'm on the board of is, unfortunately, we don't have it in South Australia, which is a bit of a gripe of mine, but they have members of 4 universities on the East Coast plus CSIRO, and they invest for those entities, spin-outs from those companies. And it's a bit of a hybrid. So, for example, it's not a closed fund, because that's the kind of company you're talking about. One of the deadly things is a closed-end fund. You know, a 10-year closed fund. And this happened to me in TGR Biosciences. We had a very friendly venture capital investor, but he invested in us at year 5 of his 10-year fund, and he thought he was going to get an extension. And then we hit the global financial crisis, and all the investors, super funds and things said, we're out of this game. Sorry, you have to sell this company. So we were forced to end up selling TGR Biosciences as a management buyout for a song, which stuffed a whole lot of the original investors. Because of that, it turned around and grew, as I said, in this assay kit area, and has been very successful. But a tough thing for a company to face when you're at that phase, where UniSeed is not a closed-end fund and provides a little bit more of that between angels and venture capital of nurturing of early stage. Invest a bit earlier than what venture capital would do. So I think we need more of those funds. We don't have the full breadth of things that, so, you know, what you say is a real problem.
I agree with your observations. The SA Venture Fund was set up to solve a particular problem. There was an observation a few years ago that within that high risk, high return, many startups fail, but some take over the world place, there were not enough people in South Australia investing. So I believe that's why we exist. But yes, in more mature startup ecosystems around the world, the funding options have become a lot more diverse. Venture debt's one of the first examples, but I've heard about funds that will, if you're in the consumer or the SaaS space, they'll specifically fund customer acquisition. If you can come to them with a year or 2 of cohort data that says, for every $10 we spend on marketing, we pay that back in 9 months, 10 months, 12 months, they will fund just that marketing budget for you and take a percentage maybe of the new revenue or this or that. These are more mature market funding options, but they exist, and potentially folks in Adelaide could copy and paste that idea. Again, we're happy to have those conversations and try and point people in those directions if we think it's right.
Judy?
The point I'd make is, and we heard this before from the floor, I think the question was, where are the angel investors? We can't find them. And I think you'll probably hear angel investors say, well, where are the startups? We can't find them. So to some extent, there's an opportunity to organise yourselves in a network that's a little bit more active if you're in that cohort of startups that are not really going to be a venture investable business, but are possibly an angel investor type business that might give a 3x return or have some other way of paying back investors. It might be an earn out through dividend, whatever the structure might be. There's different structures, but often it's having that portfolio that people can look at and say, here's something I can invest in. Just a thought. Before
we go to the next question, Michael Macalino is the Associate Director of AgTech at BDO, if you want to talk to him later. There you go. Just thought I would introduce our questions. Now we have a question. Do you want to say your name, your role, your company?
Thanks, Daniel Polaris, Director, Polaris Legal. And my question's for David. When you returned to Australia to start up Uber here, I understand ride-sharing services were still unlawful then. It seems quite a significant challenge to overcome. My question is, what was your strategy to overcome the challenge, and what advice would you have for startups facing similar challenges?
Winding the clock back. I came back in 2012, and as I was winding up at Uber, I actually dug out my old Excel spreadsheets that I put together where I calculated what did I think the size of the market was in Sydney and what might this become. And I got to a number that was wrong by a factor of 50. And the company I joined at that time was just the luxury product, Uber Black, which it still exists today, but it's a more expensive option to taxi, so therefore not for everybody. Ride sharing came a couple of years later. The core ingredient in everything that we were able to achieve was it was a product that customers were really passionate about. And at some point, when there were decisions being made in government, we might ask them, hey, if you've got an opinion on this topic, here's the email address for your local member. Please have your voice heard. They only did that because they were really, really happy about what they were using. It helped that they were grumpy about the prior alternative. So there was quite a lot of passion in that, but we had nothing without customers that were on board with what we wanted to do. The company was born at the right time because because it was a location-based service. We had some sense for who your local member of parliament was. Twitter was a thing, so you could just press one button and start tweeting. And so social media suddenly was capturing their attention. So we had the right tools at the right time with the right product. But as far as repeatable lessons, it's just, your customers will be your voice. That's the only reason it worked.
Before I hand over the mic, I do encourage you all to make yourself known to others, to our panelists here tonight, to the previous panel, and have fun and enjoy human company in real life.
So thank you for all your speakers. I just would like to welcome David Pisoni, if you would like to come here. And I would like... So as you know, David is our Minister of Innovation and Skills. So I will give you the microphone.
Well, thank you so much. And of course, David, I remember those emails coming in. And then almost the next day, I'd get the same number from the taxi industry. So it was a... but of course, we were in opposition back then, but we were still very supportive of innovation. And the new way of doing business. And of course, we haven't changed as a government. This venue that you're sitting in now, when we were elected in March 2018, was an empty hospital site with abandoned. Basically, there was no plan other than the one that we took the election. What's interesting about that is that the Innovation Centre was a way of using the old buildings because, you can't knock them down. They're beautiful buildings. We wanted to activate them, but it's now become the entire focus of the whole site. It's amazing how quickly the desire to build an ecosystem for startups and innovation has taken off. And it's not just, of course, the work we're doing here. We've got other innovation centres throughout the state. We've connected both Mount Gambier and Whyalla to the SaberNet. It's a very fast government-owned, university-owned fibre system that connects those regions to the rest of the world on fast internet. And of course, we've even introduced for the first time in Australia, innovation and entrepreneurial curriculum in our high schools. And I was just sitting here listening to the panel and imagining in just a few years' time, as we're starting to change the culture here in South Australia, that this will be year 11 and 12 students being this engaged in venture capital. Wouldn't that be a turnaround for South Australia, where kids are going to school, not in the hope that someone will give them a job when they're finished, but with the ambition of making jobs for others through starting their own businesses. And that's the vision that we have as a government. Tomorrow we'll be announcing our Excite program here at this site. I think just over 12 hours time, I'll be back here with the chief scientist who's done an enormous job in engaging and understanding the entrepreneurial sector and the innovation sector here in South Australia. And we'll be announcing what we'll be doing to support the Innovation Centre. I think Tuesday night's budget, there's some terrific news for R&D. South Australia has been traditionally quite poor at accessing R&D, and we'll be announcing some support for South Australian businesses to do that tomorrow through our Excite program. So 12 months ago, we announced our fixed program, our Future Industries Exchange program, and here we are now, of course, about to announce our Excite program based around science and research innovation. We do a lot of very clever things here in South Australia, but then we give them away. What obviously we want to do is work, be the facilitators of the private sector, working with our research sector and commercialising those products here in South Australia. Owning the IP, whether that be science IP, whether it be creative industries IP, whether it be something you've designed as a unique service product that can be sold around the world. And that was the whole idea about the Productivity Commission's report that identified an opportunity for the government to be a customer of our startup community. I mean, this is revolutionary, the Go to Gov program. If you look at the history of how government has purchased in the past, you know, it's had this little room of experts. I sort of close my eyes and I picture what that room might look like. You know, a smoky room with middle-aged men and older in long socks and sandals, pumping out tender documents and telling the industry what the government wants to fix their problems. Well, we've actually, with our Go to Gov program, we're going out to the startup community, and not only are we saying, look, we've got these problems, what can you do? What do you think will fix it? We're also allowing the startup community to actually identify problems that the government has with a solution to fix it. So this is our contribution, if you like, as being, you know, the biggest business in town, and we want to change that as quickly as we can here in South Australia. We don't want the government to be the biggest business in town, and we want the startup community to obviously be able to say they've got a program that government should be buying. We don't want them going to other states, going overseas and saying, we've got this government program. And then when I ask the question, well, does your government use it? We say, well, no, they don't. So it's a bit of a hard sell. So it's about backing small business, about taking risks. You know, I expect that there'll be at some stage the Premier or I will be in front of a camera saying, yes, this did go south. You know, it all went to shit, but sorry. You know, we've got to get back on the horse and put that down to experience and continue with the program. And this is a change of attitude. You would all know that here in Australia, and I think in South Australia in particular, if you fail in business, you might as well move to an island where they put all the lepers, because nobody wants to know you. Whereas that really is a learning experience. We need to be more like they are in countries like the United States, who will value someone that has achieved something but perhaps fallen over at the last mile or the last yard, and put that down to experience. And that's what we need for our startup community to succeed. That's what we'd like to see as a government, a complete change of culture here in South Australia, a strong private enterprise-driven company that has international products that live here but are servicing the world. So good luck, everybody, and thanks so much for attending this evening. And I think I'm officially closing now, aren't I, the event?
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much. So before Leo will close in two minutes, I would like to thank you, all the Stone and Child team, especially Mary, Marion, Mike, Chris and Dan. I would like also to thank you, the French Tech, so for the help for the organization, Marion, Alexandra, and Amélie. I would like to thank you, Australians, all the speakers today, and Sophie, who is in Mexico and helped a lot. Thank you so much, Leo, to come to Adelaide here for this first event.
Thank you, Natalie. A big thanks, to Natalie. I remember she presented actually in Sydney for the in September last year. So it's amazing. You made me come to Adelaide and import that concept. So I hope you all enjoy the experience tonight, and we'll make the most. We've got plenty of amazing food prepared by Les Deux Coqs, like a French restaurant some of you may know. There's still plenty of drink. I think we're looking to close around 9 p.m. So make sure you enjoy and you meet as many people as possible. We had obviously a number of people online. We've been recording this event, and I think it's been amazing to have all the parts of the ecosystem here represented. It's quite fascinating to see the energy, the creativity in South Australia. So well done, for giving a good image. Well done to the founder to also push a little bit and talk a little bit about what's probably missing for them. Even though they are building some amazing ventures. And yeah, I mean, for me, it's it's been a great journey. Jump in a plane for the first time in 9 months, and be here with you. So if obviously, if I can help any of your business to grow, come and see me, and you're all very welcome in our community. Big thanks to all the partners, Startup Adelaide, obviously, French Tech, South Start. Stone and Chalk. I asked actually Mike to come. He's been doing an amazing job, at the back, and for all our kind of virtual attendees. So big thanks to all of you.
Thank you, and thanks. Thank you. Cheers. And I just wanted to extend the invitation again to join us next Wednesday evening, where we have an event to the title of Adelaide Gateway to the Stars. You get to hear Flavia and Lloyd talking about the launch. So it's another great opportunity to be back here experiencing the events that we have here. Thank you. Cheers.